Domine maris undisoni, titanis mitidis qualique soni, te unides favori modulis venerando fins, se iubeos flagitant variis liberare maris.
Nobilis, humilis, magnae martyr stabilis, habilis, utilis, comes venerabilis, et tutor laudabilis tuos subditos, serva carnis fragilis mole positos.
Hi, I'm Stan Brakhage, and I'd like to read you my favorite poem. It's called, one of my very favorite poems, A Dream Within a Dream by Edgar Allan Poe. This is the first stanza. Take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now this much let me avow. You are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. End quote. I pause there to say there's a story behind this poem. It's embedded within the poem, and it has to do with young Edgar Allan Poe, about 3 years old, watching the death of his mother from tuberculosis in a terrible slum dwelling, basement dwelling, where she had no chance to beat the disease. She was a theatrical person, an actress in fact, and always dressing herself up in ways to be other people, to entertain the children, as that's the only entertainment young Poe and his sister had. And her death, then watching her being carried away, had upon him an extraordinarily different sense than death does hardly at all for children today from whom it is hidden. One, it was clear, her death, her being gone. Two, what was she that had gone? Here's stanza 2. Quote, I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep, while I weep. O God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? O God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? End. Everything has a story behind it, like we say, but also within it. Those explicit details I gave in the middle of that poem might not be extricable, but what was important about them is, it used to be that most poetry just told its story straight out and was set to music, as is this Elizabethan folk song sung by Ed McCurdy. This song called A Maiden Did a Bathing Go.
The 24th day of May, of all days in the year, sir, a virgin lady fresh and gay did privately appear, sir. Hard by a riverside got she, and did sing loud rather, 'cause she was sure she was secure, and had intent to bath her. With glittering, glancing, jealous eyes, she shyly looks about, sir, to see if any lurking spies were hid to find her out, sir. And being well resolved that none could see her nakedness, sir, she pulled her robes off one by one and did herself undress, sir. Into a fluent stream she leapt, she lived like Venus glass, sir. The fishes from all quarters crept to see so fair a lass, sir. Each fish did wish himself a man, about her all were drawn, sir. And at the sight of her began to spread about their spawn, sir. A lad that long her love had been, and could obtain no grace, sir. For all her prying lay unseen, hid in a secret place, sir. Who had often been repulsed when he had come to woo her, pulled off his clothes and furiously did run and leap into her. She squeaked, she cried, and down she dived. He brought her up again, sir. He brought her o'er upon the shore, and then, sir. As Adam did old Eve enjoy, you may guess what I mean, sir. Because she all uncovered lay, he covered her again, sir. With watered eyes she pants and cries, I'm utterly undone, sir. If you will not be wed to me by the next morning sun, sir. He answered her he would not stir out of her sight till then, sir. We'll both clasp hands in wedlock bands, marry and to it again, sir.
Most often, the story does not turn out so simply happy, as we know. It's hard to present story in the conventional literary sense on a program that only has 26 minutes. But there are stories within stories, and certainly one that stands out in my mind is from William Faulkner's Light in August, himself reading the story of Dilsey coming to live with her brother after her father's death, and how she gets pregnant. William Faulkner reading from Light in August.
The brother was 20 years her senior. She hardly remembered him at all when she came to live with him. He lived in a 4-room and unpainted house with his labor and child-ridden wife. For almost half of every year, the sister-in-law was either lying in or recovering. During this time, Lena did all the housework, took care of the other children. Later she told herself, I reckon that's why I got one so quick myself. She slept in a lean-to room at the back of the house. It had a window which she learned to open and close again in the dark without making a sound. Even though they also slept in the lean-to room at first, her oldest nephew, and then the 2 oldest, and then the 3. She had lived there 8 years before she opened the window for the first time. She had not opened it a dozen times harder before she discovered that she should not have opened it at all. She said to herself, that's just my luck. The sister-in-law told the brother. Then he remarked her changing shape, which he should have noticed some time before. He was a hard man, softness and gentleness and youth. He was just 40, and almost everything else except a kind of stubborn and despairing fortitude and the bleak heritage of his blood pride had been sweated out of him. He called her whore. He accused the right man. Young bachelors or sawdust Casanovas anyway were even fewer in number than families. But she would not admit it, though the man had departed 6 months ago. She just repeated stubbornly, he's going to send for me. He said he would send for me. Unshakable, sheep-like, having drawn upon that reserve of patient and steadfast fidelity upon which the Lucas Birches depend and trust, even though they do not intend to be present when the need for it arises. 2 weeks later she climbed again through the window. It was a little difficult this time. If it had been this hard to do before, I reckon I would not be doing it now, she thought. She could have departed by the door by daylight. Nobody would have stopped her. Perhaps she knew that. But she chose to go by night and through the window. She carried a palm leaf fan and a small bundle tied neatly in a bandana handkerchief. It contained, among other things, 35 cents in nickels and dimes. Her shoes were a pair of his own, which her brother had given her. They were but slightly worn, since in the summer neither of them wore shoes at all. When she felt the dust of the road beneath her feet, she removed the shoes and carried them in her hand. She had been doing that now for almost 4 weeks. Behind her, the 4 weeks, the avocation of thaw is a peaceful corridor paved with unflagging and tranquil faith, and people with kind and nameless faces and voices. Lucas Budge, I don't know of anybody by that name around here. This road, it goes to Pocahontas. He might be there. It's possible. He has a wagon that's going a piece of the way. It will take you that far. Back rolling now behind her a long, monotonous succession of peaceful and undeviating changes from day to dark and dark to day again, through which she advanced in identical and anonymous and deliberate wagons as though through a succession of creak-wheeled and limp-eared avatars, like something moving forever and without progress across an urn. The wagon mounts the hill toward her. She passed it about a mile back down the road. It was standing beside the road, the mules asleep in the traces, and their heads pointed in the direction in which she walked. She saw it, and she saw the 2 men squatting beside a barn beyond the fence. She looked at the wagon and the men once, a single glance, all-embracing, swift, innocent, and profound. She did not stop. Very likely the men beyond the fence had not seen her even look at the wagon or at them. Neither did she look back. She went on out of sight, walking slowly, the shoes unlaced about her ankles, until she reached the top of the hill a mile beyond. Then she sat down on the ditch bank with her feet in the shallow ditch and removed the shoes. After a while she began to hear the wagon. She heard it for some time. Then it came into sight, mounting the hill. The sharp and brittle crack and clatter of its weathered and ungreased wood and metal is slow and terrific, a series of dry, sluggish reports carrying for half a mile across the hot, still, pine-windy silence of the August afternoon. Though the mules plod in a steady and unflagging hypnosis, the vehicle does not seem to progress. It seems to hang suspended in the middle distance forever and forever. So infinitesimal is its progress, like a shabby bead upon the mild red string of road. So much is this so that in the watching of it the eye loses it as sight and sense drowsily merge and blend, like the road itself, with all the peaceful and monotonous changes between darkness and day, like already measured thread being rewound onto a spool. So that at last, as though out of some trivial and unimportant region beyond even distance, the sound of it seems to come slow and terrific and without meaning, as though it were a ghost traveling a half-mile ahead of its own shape. That far within my hearing, before my seeing, Lena thinks. She thinks of herself as already moving, riding again, thinking. Then it would be as if I were riding for a half-mile before I even got into the wagon, before the wagon even got to where I was waiting, and that when the wagon is empty of me again, it will go on for a half-mile with me still in it. She waits, not even watching the wagon now, while thinking goes idle and swift and smooth, filled with nameless, kind faces and voices. Lucas Budge, you say you tried in Pocahontas? This road, it goes to Springvale. You wait here. There will be a wagon passing soon that will take you as far as it goes. Thinking, and if he is going all the way to Jefferson, I will be riding within the hearing of Lucas Budge before his seeing. He will hear the wagon, but he won't know. So there will be one within his hearing before his seeing. And then he will see me, and he will be excited. And so there will be 2 within his seeing before his remembering.
And then there's inference. I mean, that story, really part of a much longer series of stories within stories, as a novel can become that large mirror of life. Then there's inference, which leads us on, or what in poetry might be called metaphor, or what in life might be called metaphor. For instance, I'd like to share with you what I think is a story, but it's really just a entry in a journal kept by the Japanese writer Akutagawa. Akutagawa is most known to those of us in the West because he wrote In a Bush, or Rashomon, which was Kurosawa's film that began his worldwide fame. Akutagawa died young, and A Fool's Life, which is what he titled his journal, was the last book he left. Here's one of the entries. Quote, Spartan discipline. With a friend, walking up a back street, moving directly toward them, a hooded rickshaw approaching, totally unexpected, riding in it, she of last night. In the daytime, too, her face seemed lit by the moon. His friend present, naturally, there couldn't be any sign of recognition. A beauty, his friend noted. He, looking off to where the street banged up against the spring hills, not able to hold back. Yes, a real beauty. This extraordinary little book is filled with stories that really the reader has to finish. And in finishing can go in a variety of directions and participate in the making of all of them, him or herself. And what is the story behind this story? Here's Akutagawa's last note, his suicide message to his friend Masao. Quote, "Whether or not this manuscript ought to be published, and of course when it should be published or where, I leave to you. You know most of the people who appear in it, but if you have it published, I'd rather it didn't have an index. I exist now in a most unhappy happiness, but strangely without remorse, only that I feel sorry for those who had me as husband, father, son. Goodbye. In the manuscript, consciously at least, there is no attempt to justify myself. Last, I leave this manuscript to you, feeling that you knew me better than anyone else, the skin of this cosmopolitan me stripped away. At the fool in this manuscript, go ahead and laugh. 20th June, 1927. Akutagawa." I think he was 36 years old when he committed suicide. That translation, by the way, is by Will Peterson, a beautiful little book. I wish there were more of Akutagawa's writing available to us. It's fashionable these days to say that poetry's abandoned story altogether. Not at all. Poetry has tried to find ways to tell stories that include everything and depend a great deal on inference. One of the greatest such examples I know I'd love to share with you, the poet Charles Olson. I had one whole glorious day and night with him, one should really say mostly night, and several days following after of friendship and affection and long conversations. He lived in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and he created a figure like every man from the Middle Ages, only for our time, called Maximus of Gloucester. And this figure embodied or carried was the dramatis personae of all the people in the history of Gloucester and all those in the immediate environment around him. Near Gloucester was a place called Dogtown, which Charles said was one of the most beautiful places on earth. One of those places, he told me, that you know is extraordinarily special, and which he was also watching being ruined. Dogtown yielded to him, out of its histories, the following story of a man named Mary who raised a little bull and fought with it every day as he grew up, matching his own strength to it, a way of building his own strength to match it. And Charles wrote this story, which reaches all the way back to the Hittites, maybe, or at least the Greeks, the Egyptians with their sense of the sky and the earth, and everything he could bring to it to expand a story with all the possible inferences anyone could think of. Charles Olson reading Maximus of Dogtown.
Watered rock of pasture, meadow, orchard, road, where Mary died in pieces, tossed by the bull he raised himself to fight in front of people to show off his handsome sailorism. Died as torso, head, and limbs in a Saturday night's darkness, drunk trying to get the young bull down to see if Sunday morning again he might, before the people show off once more his prowess, braggart man to die among Dogtown meadow rocks. Under the dish of the earth, Okeanos under Dogtown, through which, inside of which, the sun passes at night. She passes the sun back to the east through her body, the Geb of heaven at night. Newt is water, above and below, vault above and below, watered rock on which, by which Mary was so many pieces Sunday morning. Subterranean and celestial, primordial water holes, Dogtown high, and down the ice holes, Dogtown scattered, bold as little bull who killed Mary, who sought to manifest his soul. The stars manifest their souls. My soft sough, the roads of Dogtown trickling like from underground rock, springs under an early cold March moon. Or hot summer and my son, we come around a corner where a rill makes Gee Avenue in a thin ford. After we see a black duck walking across a populated corner, life spills out. Soft, soft rock, Mary died by in the black night. Fishermen lived in Dogtown and came when it was old to whore on Saturday nights at three girls' houses. Pisces eternally swimming inside her overhead, their boots or the horse clashing the sedimentary rock. Tortoise shell, she sits on the maternal beast of the moon and the earth. Not one mystery, nor man, possibly not even a bird, heard Mary fight that bull by was Jeremiah Millet's house. Drunk to cover his shame, blushing Mary in the bar, walking up to Dogtown to try his strength, the baby bull, now full grown, waiting, not even knowing death was in his power over this man who lay in the Sunday morning sun like smoked fish in the same field, fly blown in a colony of self-hugging grubs, handsome in the sun, the mass of the dead and the odor eaten out of the air by the grubs sticking, moving by each other as close as sloths. She is the goddess of the earth and night, of the earth and fish, of the little bull and of Mary. Mary had a wife. She is the heavenly mother. The stars are the fish swimming. In the heavenly ocean she has 400 breasts. Mary could have used as many, could have drunk the strength he claimed he had, the bravo. Pulque in Spain, where he saw the fight, Ockley in Mexico, where he wanted to show off, dead in Gloucester, where he did. The 400 gods of drink alone sat with him as he died in pieces. In 400 pieces his brain shot the last time the bull hit him, pegged him to the rock before he tore him to pieces. The night sky looked down. Dogtown is soft in every season, high up on her granite horse, light growth of all trees and bushes, strong like a puddle's ice. The bios of nature in this park of eternal events is a sidewalk to slide on this terminal moraine. The rocks, the glacier-tossed toys Mary played by with his bull. 400 sons of her only would sit by the game. All else was in the sky or in town or shrinking solid rock. We drink or break open our veins solely to know. A drunkard showing Mary was born under the Pulque sign. The plants of heaven, the animals of the soul were denied. Joking men had laughed at Mary. Drink had made him brave. Only the sun in the morning covered him with flies. Then only, after the grubs had done him, did the earth let her robe uncover and her pot take him in.
Maybe there's time to read you another little story from the journal by Akutagawa. Sparks. Rain-drenched, treading asphalt. The rain ferocious. In the downpour he breathed in the rubber coat odor. Before his eyes, an aerial power line released sparks of violet. Strangely, he was moved. Tucked away in his jacket pocket, meant for publication in the group magazine, was his manuscript. Walking on in the rain once more, he looked back at the line. Unremittingly it emitted its prickly sparks. Though he considered all of human existence, there was nothing special worth having. But those violet blossoms of fire, those awesome fireworks in the sky, to hold them, he would give his life. And that's the end of that. And maybe another, very briefly, another side of him, butterfly. Quote, "In wind reeking of duckweed, a butterfly flashed, only for an instant. On his dry lips he felt the touch of the butterfly wings. But years afterwards, on his lips, the wings' imprinted dust still glittered." And so we end, as usual, with Remembrance by Charles Ives.